Alpha husband now rejects my touch after I kissed another man and made me lose my...
Have you ever been in a situation when a seemingly small mistake ended up costing you greatly? It happened to me. I didn't even have any fucking clue that it will turn out to be like this. Trust is very important for any relationship. It takes a lot of effort to build this trust and very little to break it. I made the mistake of breaking it, and I regret that. Till this date. I, female 36, married to my husband, male 40. We have been married for 2 years. My husband is a professor in our local university. I'm an assistant professor in the same university. I joined this university 3 years back. The pay was really good, and the working hours were also less compared to my previous place of work. My husband is a senior professor in this university. He is well respected there. I met my husband in university when I was hired as an assistant professor to work under him. My husband was present during my interviews. I developed an instant crush on him. He was smart and fun. I was over the moon when I was hired to work under him as his assistant. We had to work in close proximity as our work demanded that. I used to attend his classes with him and also corrected test papers after work together. Working together worked in our favor. We used to hang out a lot with each other. One thing led to another and we started going on dates together. Our relationship started with small talks and casual jokes. We soon started having lunch together and spending more and more time with each other. The attraction was mutual, and it wasn't long before we got in a relationship with each other. After being together for a year, my husband asked me to marry him. I liked being with him. He was well respected in the college. He spoke with certain authority. All that had me really falling for him. I loved the way he cared for me. I told him yes, and we got married in a small wedding ceremony. Our married life was going well. I had moved in with him in his small bungalow. We were happy together. Our life was going great. We used to work together and then got to come home together. I was happy and content in my marriage. I felt like I had everything I ever wanted. My husband was the perfect alpha male. He was strong, confident, and charismatic. He knew what he wanted and how to get it. I admired him for his intelligence and hardworking nature. I felt like we were a perfect match, but soon I lost him. A year into our marriage, I made a small mistake that ended up costing me everything. It was a mistake that I didn't even think twice about when I made it, but the consequences that followed were unimaginable. I wish I could rectify that mistake. It all started with a new assistant professor who had joined our university. Let's call him George. George was around the same age as me. George was charming, confident, and, to be honest, very attractive. I had casually talked to him a few times before, but it was nothing out of the ordinary. However, one day, when my husband was out of town and I was working from a cafe near the university, me and George happened to bump into each other. We both ordered coffee and started chatting. The conversation was lighthearted and fun. We discussed everything from work to our personal lives. George was single and had just moved into the town. He was very easy to talk to, and before I knew it, a few hours had passed. We exchanged numbers and promised to keep in touch. I didn't think much of it at the time. I enjoyed talking to George, but I was happily married to my husband. Little did I know my small mistake of exchanging numbers with George would lead to a series of events that would turn my life upside down. Over the course of the next few weeks, George and I started texting each other. Initially, it was just casual conversations about work and our interests. But soon, our conversations became more flirtatious. I couldn't believe it at first. I was pretty sure that everyone was aware that I was married and who my husband was. George started sending me flirty texts messages which were subtle. I could have ignored it if I wanted to, but I didn't. I responded back to him in a flirty way too. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't seem to stop myself. I would text him only when my husband wasn't around, as I couldn't risk my husband finding this out. I was just having fun with texts. I didn't think I was doing anything very wrong. One day, my husband and I got into a really big fight. He wanted a baby, whereas I told him that I wasn't ready yet. We already had this discussion, and I had told him that I didn't want a baby. Having a baby came with a lot of responsibilities. I didn't think I was at that point of time where I was ready for those responsibilities. I tried to make my husband understand this, but he was too furious to listen. He said some really hurtful words to me. He told me that it was in my nature to run away from responsibilities. It made me very upset and sad. He left the house to get some space from me. I was home alone. The fight left me feeling upset and vulnerable. And that's when George messaged me. asking if I wanted to grab a drink with him. I hesitated, but the temptation was too strong, so I agreed to meet him. My husband needed his space away from me, so it was fine that I was taking my space too. I thought to myself as I texted George that I was down for meeting that night. We went to a bar far away from the university. It was on the outskirts of the town, so there were slim chances that I would run into someone who would recognize me there. The bar had an amazing atmosphere. The dim lights and soft music set the perfect mood for a night out. The drinks were flowing, and the conversation was light and fun. But then things started to get a little out of hand. I got very drunk that night. I ordered multiple shots of vodka. George was by my side throughout the night. We were flirting with each other continuously. It started to feel like we were the only two people in the world. I forgot about my fight with my husband. It was nice to be away from the stress of my marriage for a while. The chemistry between me and George was undeniable, and it was unlike anything I had ever felt before. That night, I cheated on my husband. George came out to drop me to my cab. We stood there and waited for my cab to come. We were waiting on the pavement when he kissed me. He gave me enough time and space to back out, but I didn't. I kissed him back. I was so drunk that I didn't realize anything till the next morning. I woke up with a terrible hangover the next morning. It took me some time to realize what had happened last night. My kiss with George came back to memory, and I instantly thought, fuck, what had I done? I went out of the bedroom and found my husband at the kitchen counter. He was quite calmer than yesterday. He asked me where I was last night. I told him that I went out with my friends. He nodded to that and then said sorry for our fight that happened the previous day. He told me that he'll give me as much time as I want and there's no hurry to have a baby. He just couldn't wait to grow our family. I was instantly consumed by the guilt of what I had done last night. I kissed another man when my husband was dreaming of growing our family together. It was just a kiss, but still. It was a mistake that I deeply regretted, but there was no going back now. I knew I had made a grave error in judgment, and the regret consumed me. I wanted to come clean and tell my husband, but I was too scared of his reaction. I was terrified that he might find out about my mistake and leave me. I knew him. He wasn't the type of man who would let something like this slide. I saw text messages from George when I went to my bedroom. There were texts from him the previous night asking me if I had reached home safe. There were also texts about how he really enjoyed our kiss and would like to see me again. I immediately blocked him. The guilt of not being honest with my husband weighed heavily on me every day. I loved my husband, and I knew that if he found out the truth, it would break his heart. But still, I couldn't bring myself to tell him what had happened between George and me. Every night I lay awake in bed, motionless, reliving the moment I made my mistake. The guilt and fear were heavy like a physical weight, crushing my chest. It had been weeks since that day, but I still didn't have the courage to tell my husband what I had done. My throat seemed to close up every time I tried to form the words. So I decided to keep it a secret. I tried to act normal in front of my husband for the next few weeks. But every time he touched me, every time he kissed me, I felt like a fraud. I felt like I was deceiving him. I was living a lie. I was stuck in this limbo of guilt and fear until one day, George came to the seminar conducted by my department. My husband was the speaker in this event. As soon as I saw George, my heart sank. He knew what we had done, and he could easily reveal the truth if he wanted to. Fortunately for me, he didn't say anything about that night or even acknowledge me in any way. He kept his distance throughout his time on campus, never once giving me an indication that he remembered our secret kiss from months ago. I was relieved that he hadn't said anything about us, but at the same time, my guilt only intensified even further. It felt like a ticking time bomb waiting to go off at any moment. The day finally came when everything fell apart. It was a Monday morning and I was running late for work. I had a meeting with one of my colleagues and I was already 10 minutes late. I quickly grabbed my bag and rushed out of the house. I got in my car and started driving towards the university. As I was driving, I realized that I had left my phone at home. I panicked for a moment, but I decided to keep going. I knew that I would be late for my meeting, but I didn't want to turn back and risk being even later. My husband didn't have anything scheduled for the morning. He was going to come separately before his afternoon meeting. When I finally arrived at the university, I rushed to my meeting. It was a productive meeting, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. As soon as the meeting was over, I rushed to my office. When I opened the door, I saw my husband sitting at my desk. He had my phone in his hand, and he was scrolling through my messages. I froze. I knew at that moment that everything was about to come crashing down. My small mistake had finally caught up with me. My husband looked up at me with a look of betrayal in his eyes. I felt like the biggest fool in the world. He stood up and handed me my phone. "Why did you do it?" he asked me, his voice barely above a whisper. He had scrolled through my text messages with George. He read all our text messages where he flirted with me and I flirted back. He also mentioned the kiss in the texts. I had no words to say. I knew that there was no justification for what I had done. All I could do was hang my head in shame and wait for whatever was to come. My husband told me how he knew something was wrong when I started avoiding him in the last weeks. He told me that he had thought I was still upset about the baby thing, and that's why he was giving me space. "I never thought you'd betray me like this," he said to me. My husband didn't say anything else. He simply left my office, leaving me alone with my guilt and shame. I knew that I had lost his trust, and I didn't know if I would ever be able to earn it back. I sat at my desk for what felt like hours, numb with shock and regret. I had destroyed the one thing that mattered most to me, my marriage, and all because of a stupid kiss. I went home after some time. I needed to explain to my husband that it was a mistake and that I really loved him. My husband was sitting on the couch in the living room drinking his whiskey. I went to him to hold him and explain to him what had happened, but he rejected my touch and pushed me away. His eyes were cold and distant, and I could feel the anger radiating off of him. I knew that I had hurt him deeply, and there was nothing I could do to make it right. I felt an urgent need to explain everything to him. I told him how it was just a kiss, and that happened only because I was extremely drunk. He looked at me with so much anger but didn't say anything to me. He left the house after my confession. For the next few days, my husband barely spoke to me. It was like I didn't exist. I begged him for his forgiveness, but he refused to even look at me. I felt like a ghost wandering without any purpose through our home. Days turned into weeks with my husband and I living together but barely speaking. The air between us was thick with tension and unsaid words that hung like a loaded gun. I tried to reach out to him, but he kept pushing me away, refusing to even look at me. Everything I tried went in vain. I tried to hug him while he was sleeping, but he rejected my touch. For a while, I thought that we could work things out if I just kept putting efforts to earn his forgiveness. I thought that we could talk about what had happened and find a way to move forward, but it seemed like my husband had already made up his mind about what he wanted to do. One day, he came to me and told me that he wanted to talk about something. Hope blossomed as I sat there to listen to his words. I thought that maybe he has finally forgiven me and wants to make things all right again. He immediately crushed all the hope when he asked me to leave the house. He told me that he needed some space to think about things. He said it was hard for him to think with a clear mind when I'm in the same house as him. I was devastated. I couldn't believe that it had come to this. I didn't fight his decision. A small part of me hoped that maybe if we stayed away for a while, he would miss me and everything would get back to normal. I rented a small apartment in town and moved out of our home. It was really hard for me to leave the house. I didn't pack all of my stuff as I had hoped that I was going to come back and live here with him again. I moved to the apartment. It was a lonely existence there without my husband. I spent most of my days in tears, regretting everything that had happened. Or I would try to escape everything by getting lost in my work. I had requested work from home because I was too depressed to face the world. Work was a good distraction until I lost it too. One day, I got a call from the head of my department telling me that I was immediately terminated from my job. I was stunned. It felt like everything was falling apart in my life, my marriage, my home, and now my career. I had poured my heart and soul into my work, only to have it taken away from me because of a foolish mistake. I knew that it was my husband's doing. He had always been controlling, but I never thought he would go this far. I begged and pleaded with the head of my department to reconsider, but it was no use. The head of the department explained that my husband had called and demanded that they fire me from my job. He had told them that if they didn't remove me, he would resign, and the university couldn't have that. He had used his power and influence in the university to fire me. With no job and no home, I felt lost and helpless. I didn't know what to do or where to turn. The guilt and shame of my mistake were still heavy on my heart, and now I had to deal with the consequences of my husband's revenge too. Days turned into weeks, and I struggled to make ends meet. I didn't have much savings with me either. I applied for jobs everywhere, but no one would hire me. I felt like a failure in every aspect of my life. But then something unexpected happened. George reached out to me. He had mailed me since I had blocked his contact on my phone. It wasn't hard to get my mail since George was also a professor in the university where I used to work. He told me that he had heard about what had happened, and he wanted to help me. At first, I was hesitant. After all, he was the reason why I was in this mess in the first place. I was already jobless and had a husband who hated me. I didn't know what worse could happen to me, so I thought might as well meet George and see what happens. I met George at a small cafe near my apartment. He was dressed in a smart suit and had a charming smile on his face. He offered to buy me a coffee and we sat down at a small table by the window. He listened patiently as I poured out my heart to him. I told him everything that had happened, about my husband, my job, and my life falling apart. I felt a sense of relief as I spoke, like a weight was being lifted off my chest. This was the first time I was sharing this with someone. George sat quietly for a moment after I had finished. Then he leaned forward and took my hand. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I had no idea that things had gotten this bad for you." He looked into my eyes, and for a moment, I felt like I was drowning in them. There was a warmth and kindness in his gaze that I hadn't seen in a long time. It was almost comforting. "I want to help you," he said. His gesture was comforting. My husband hated me at the moment, but this man wanted to help me out. I told him that even though I appreciated his gesture, I couldn't accept it. I didn't want to make my husband more angry. Taking help from George would have done more harm than good. But as the days passed and my situation became even more desperate, I found myself thinking about George's offer more and more. I had no other options left, and he seemed genuine in his desire to help me. He had told me that he had connections in the academic world and that he could help me find a new job. My husband wasn't picking my calls. I had called him so many times to talk to him about my termination, but there was no response by his side. He was completely avoiding my existence, so I called George and told him that I had changed my mind. George helped me in finding a new job in another university. I had a hope that my life was finally getting back on track. Getting a job was the first step in making everything all right. He also helped me with my CV and cover letter. I told him that I was really grateful for his help. We weren't even friends for long, but still this guy was doing so much for me. I think that George was just trying to help me out because he also felt guilty for what had happened with me. We didn't flirt again or did anything inappropriate with each other. He was genuine in his approach to help me out in finding a job. I kept thinking about my husband and how I would have done anything to earn his forgiveness. I went to the university to talk to him, but he didn't even look at my direction and told me to leave. I was getting desperate to make him forgive me. Weeks went by and I settled into my new job. The work was challenging but rewarding, and I was slowly building a new life for myself. I tried calling my husband multiple times, but he never answered my calls or replied to my messages. I was still living alone in my small apartment with no one but George to confide in. Just as I had settled in my work, I was fired from that job as well. I had suspicion that this was my husband's doing as well. All the progress had gone to the bin, and I was back to square one. I couldn't control it anymore. I went to my husband's home and confronted him. I asked him what he wanted. He couldn't just keep taking away my work. He got livid and said that I should have thought about it before cheating on me. My husband had found out from his friends that I had gotten my new job because of George. He thought that I was having an affair with George. He told me that he hated me and that he wished he had never met me. He was in so much anger that I got scared. I tried to explain that there was nothing going on between me and George, and he was just helping me out to find a job. I swore to him but he didn't believe me. I got desperate and tried to justify the events of that night once again. I told him that I was really drunk and had way too many vodka shots. He laughed at me and told me that he cannot believe I was justifying my cheating to him. That night, I felt like I had lost my husband. The distance and coldness in his voice made it clear that he didn't want to do anything to me anymore. I had tears in my eyes when I was leaving that house. This time it seemed that I was never going to come back to this house. I kept applying for jobs at other places only to get rejected everywhere. I stopped talking to George as well. Seeing him brought back the guilt of that night when I kissed him, and it reminded me of everything that happened after that. One day when I was getting back to my apartment after another job interview, I saw an envelope waiting for me. My husband had sent me divorce papers. I couldn't stop the tears when I saw the papers. My marriage was ending because of me. It was only then that I realized that a single kiss had brought my entire world crashing down. I had never thought that a single mistake of mine could cost me my marriage and everything else. But here I was, alone, with no one to turn to for help. I didn't have many friends in town, and the ones that I had made were mutual friends with me and my husband. They were no way going to be with me and lose their friendship with him. I didn't even have my family, as they all had moved to another state because of my dad's transfer. The next few days seemed like an extremely long and painful nightmare. I went through every emotion possible, from sadness to anger, guilt to despair. I eventually stopped feeling anything at all and just knew that the only way forward was to slowly start rebuilding my life by myself. I took a deep breath and wiped away my tears. It was time to face reality and move on. I decided to sign the divorce papers. I couldn't fight for my marriage when my husband didn't want to. He had given up on me. I didn't even blame him. After all, it was me who had cheated on him. I signed the papers and went to my husband's house to give it to him. I also had to pack the rest of my stuff kept in his house. He opened the door and let me in. I gave him the papers and told him that I needed to get my stuff as well. He just nodded and made way for me to get to the bedroom. As I was going through my things, I came across a small note that my husband had left for me on our first anniversary. It read, "I love you more than anything in this world. You are my life, my soulmate, and my partner in crime. Happy anniversary, my love." The note made me cry even more. What had gone so wrong? How did we end up here? Where did all the love go? I packed as many things as I could manage and then left his house. I thought that maybe he would look at me with longing, just for a second, but nothing like that happened. There was only coldness in his eyes. After I came back to my apartment, I decided to take a break from everything and went for a walk. I walked aimlessly, lost in my thoughts. I didn't realize that I was about to get hit by a car speeding my way. A stranger had pulled me back from the road. That incident finally shook something inside me. I decided that I wasn't going to continue being a damsel in distress and was finally going to take control of my life. I left a message to my husband telling him that if he was sure about his decision, then I needed the divorce to be granted as soon as possible. He didn't reply back to me, but his lawyers contacted me and told me that the divorce proceedings won't take much time since it was an amicable divorce. They informed me of the terms mentioned in the divorce. My husband was giving me a fair share of his life earnings. I know I didn't deserve it, and neither did he want to share that with me. He was required by the law to do so. I told them to tell my husband that I didn't need his money or his assets. I needed the money even more after I lost my job, but I thought maybe this will make him forgive me. It didn't. The lawyers contacted me back, telling me that my husband had said this won't have any impact on his decision. Our divorce proceedings started soon and went as smoothly as possible. During the time we were required to be at the court, my husband didn't even look at my direction and only talked to his lawyers. His cold behavior used to hurt me so much. Our divorce was granted within 3 months by the court. I remember that I kept hope till the last moment. When the judge asked my husband if he was sure he wanted to move ahead with it, I waited for him to say no. But nothing like that happened. My husband has been relieved to lose all connections with me after the divorce, where on the other hand, I miss him every day. I wish that I could go back in time and rectify my mistake, but that is just wishful thinking. I have to spend my entire living with the guilt of destroying my relationship with my husband. After my divorce, I went out for lunch with a friend. She had called me and asked to meet since it has been very long. I wasn't very interested, but I still agreed. The friend was a mutual friend of mine and my husband. She told me that my husband has started dating again. As soon as the words slipped from her, she realized what she had told me and then completely changed the topic. I couldn't believe her words. I accepted that I had made a very big mistake, but I really loved my husband and didn't even think about moving on. And he moved on so easily. I asked more about him, but she didn't tell me anything after that. I have no one to blame for my situation but myself. If I hadn't made that foolish mistake, I would still be at home with my husband. I cannot change what has already happened, and now I'm just trying to adapt to the changes now. I knew I couldn't keep running into my husband or see him with another woman. I thought the best way to escape this pain is to get away from this town. Noon was going to give me a job here anyway, especially now when everyone knew about my divorce. I found a job in another town nearby. It was very less salary than what I used to get working with my husband, but I had no other option, so I accepted it and moved to that town. My presence didn't matter to anyone in this town either way. I'm just trying to get by each day at the moment. Some days it feels too difficult. I'm thinking of saving some money and joining therapy sessions. Maybe that would help with the guilt I carry inside me. Please let me know what you guys think. Thank you for reading my story so far. It felt good to share this with all you people here on Reddit. Update. For everyone asking me how I am doing now, thank you for asking. If I'm being honest, I don't know if I'm okay or not. It's still hard to process everything that has happened, but I just try to not think about it too much. Every time I think about the last few months, I have a breakdown. I'm just hoping it gets better with time. And for the comments which asked if either me or my husband tried to contact each other after the divorce, I did try to reach him, but he has blocked my number and on other social media platforms. I have mailed him telling him that I'm sorry, and I hoped that he would talk to me again. But like I expected, there has been no reply from him. Update. It has been more than a year since my last update. Everything has changed quite a lot since then. I thought that I was finally moving on with life. My breakdowns had decreased. I was going to therapy sessions as well. I haven't been fired from my job, which was as good as it could get. In the last year, I had tried to contact my ex-husband on multiple occasions. He hadn't talked to me even once. I wished him on his birthday via mail. The day of our anniversary was really hard for me. I couldn't help but reach him out. He never responded to any of my mails. I was still blocked on his phone. I knew he was dating someone, as my friend told me. I thought he was able to forgive me by now, and will at least talk to me. It would have been enough for me if just talked to me, but nothing. I had finally left all hopes and was trying to move on with my life as well. Just as I was trying to move forward, I was brought 4 steps backward. Last month, I had to go to the town where my husband lives for some document verification purposes. I needed his signature on some documents. I tried to reach him through email about this, but he didn't reply. I thought of going there by myself. Maybe a small part of me was just looking for some excuse to see him again. I was really anxious about meeting him after such a long time. I went to his house and rang the doorbell. I didn't know what to expect, but I surely didn't expect what I saw. A woman opened the door. She was quite young. She was also prettier than me. I knew that he was dating someone shortly after divorce, so I should have gone prepared. However, I wasn't prepared to see that woman pregnant. Her belly was showing clearly. She must have been around 5 months pregnant. It hurted me a lot to see another woman in his house pregnant with his child. I immediately got the thoughts as to how it should have been me having his child. We had a fight about having a baby when I went out that night with George. Guilt hit me hard as I stood there. I started getting thoughts as to how we wouldn't have gone this apart if we had a child to connect us with each other. I tried to compose myself. I told myself that I couldn't cry in my ex's house in front of the woman pregnant with his child. I told that woman who I was and that I needed his signature. She recognized me and told me that he's out and that to leave the paper with her. She'll courier them to me. She was kicking me out from the house, which used to be mine earlier. I nodded and gave her my address. I left that house with tears in my eyes and then came back to my apartment. I started having breakdowns again after that day. I started getting dreams about him with that woman and their child. I scheduled a session with my therapist, but even that didn't help. I have realized that I cannot escape this guilt and regret. It will always accompany me. I'm sharing this here because it feels to share my story without having someone judging me. If any of you know something to do which will make this easier, please share with me. I'm willing to try anything at this point. You know, sometimes coming from a big family comes with a price of betrayal and disloyalty. The person or the people you had thought had your back turned your back on you and betrayed you in a most cruel way. When you report the issue to the elders, they take the other person's side. I don't know if you understand me. I had brought someone from the outside who I thought would build and extend my home, but instead, she extended someone else's home, and that person was my cousin. Imagine. It's still hard talking about this. In order to heal, I have to share it and move on. As hard as it is, I have to man up and face the music, no matter how bad the tune is. Some will understand what I'm talking about, and some will catch it later. So I, M33, am naturally a quiet and reserved person. I love peace, but people take that for a ride. I got married when I was only 23 years old. I thought I had found my soulmate or the right person to share my life and grow old with, not knowing that I was actually bringing someone who would be my worst nightmare. I grew up in a village that was ruled by a king, meaning we live by rules. And if you ever do something unlawful, the king and the village people will ban you. A man had to go to the reed dance where maidens usually do their singing and traditional dancing competitions. Also to do a termly checkup if they were still pure virgins. So young and old men would attend the dance, some to watch the maidens and some to choose wives for themselves. My father was in a polygamous marriage. He had 3 wives and he chose all of them from the reed dance a long time ago. In our village, a man had to have more than 2 wives who would bear him children to expand the family surname. That tradition started way back from our great ancestors, till now it's still in operation. But nowadays, some choose maidens to use them for their selfish reasons. Some old men would choose young girls to become their wives at a young age. It's disgusting and shameful, I tell you. So I found my wife, or must I say my ex-wife, during the reed dance. My father had asked me and my brothers to go and watch it. Maybe we would get ourselves wives. Well, to tell the truth, I didn't want a wife. I was still young to have a wife. I still wanted to enjoy my young life, but if you are a boy from the villages that are ruled by kings, and your father is a king's servant, it's compulsory for us to get wives, not those city wives, but well-respected and dignified wives from the village. So there was this beautiful lady that had caught my eyes. She was a medium-sized dark woman. She was dancing so beautifully, I was taken back, no lie. Until it was her turn to do the dance, she danced and came to my direction. I had thought she was going to choose one of my brothers. Only to see her coming straight to me, she took my hand and put on a beaded bracelet that symbolizes that she had chosen me to be her boyfriend. I was really taken back by her act. She was really amazing as she was doing her dance. A week later, we had started seeing and knowing each other on another level. She was polite and very humble. Her smile was so beautiful, and it complemented her beauty so well. I enjoyed every moment I had spent with her. Our relationship kept growing to a point that a few months later, I told my father that I was ready to take a wife. I then decided to take the next step and ask my uncles and brothers to stand in on my behalf to go to Pamela's F30 homestead to ask for her hand in marriage. After everything was done traditionally, we asked to get married in church only. Our relationship was a bliss. Well, at least that's what I had thought. Pamela was so sweet and loved people, so she got along very well with my siblings, especially my male cousin. I had thought that their friendship was pure and innocent since they were the same age. I took Pam as my wife when she had just turned 20 and she had dreams of going to university to further her studies. So I had to make a plan as her husband to make sure that she achieves her dreams and goals. That time I was working at Transnet as a transport admin clerk, so I was able to afford her fees. The following year, Pam got enrolled at Durban University of Technology, which was far away from our village. As much as I was not comfortable for her to live in the city, but she had to chase her dreams, and my cousin was also attending the same university. So I was somehow relieved that at least one of the people I trusted was there with her. I would see my wife during school holidays or when I was not working, so I had to drive to Durban to see her. Sometimes I would find her at the students' accommodation chilling with my cousin. I didn't pay much attention to that because I trusted them, thinking they would never betray me, but I guess I had to trust a stone than a human being. So 3 years passed, and Pamela graduated from university. In her first year in university, she got pregnant, and unfortunately, we lost the pregnancy. I was really heartbroken, so was Pam, but her situation was worse because she even distanced herself. She started spending more time with my cousin even when she was home. She was no longer doing her wifely duties as she was supposed to. I had thought she was grieving, but can a person grieve for the whole 3 years, and during those years, you would see her beautiful smile and loud laugh when she was with my cousin? When she was with my cousin, she would be smiling more and carefree. I once confronted them about their close friendship, but they denied my allegations, even though my conscience was telling me another story. Their coziness and the way they were free with each other raised an eyebrow. I am a person who loves doing morning runs to freshen my mind and get a good morning breeze before going to work. I once asked Pam to join me and got offended thinking I was body shaming her. I didn't understand her outburst because she allowed my cousin to call her fat when they were teasing each other. So I let her be and continued to do my runs. Sometimes I would do long runs if I wanted to clear my head. So one Sunday afternoon, I had just returned home from a long run. I walked into the living room and saw my wife and cousin sitting on the couch, laughing and chatting like they were old friends. I felt a sudden pang of unease, but I brushed it off as mere paranoia. Plus, they had told me that there was going on when I had confronted them. But as I watched them, I noticed something strange. My wife and cousin were being too familiar with each other, too touchy-feely. They were sitting too close, their legs touching, and their hands resting on each other's knees. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. My suspicions got high, and I decided to investigate this issue to ease my conscience, but I was really confident that something was really going on between the two. So I decided to investigate further. I started asking questions again, pretending to be oblivious to what was going on. But my wife and cousin were too clever. They saw right through my act. They denied everything, telling me I was being paranoid and reading too much into their friendship. But I knew the truth. I could feel it in my bones. And I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. As the days passed, I became more and more obsessed with uncovering the truth. I started following my wife and cousin, watching their every move. I would wait for them not too far from their favorite spot near the river, or follow them when they were saying they were going to town. My wife would say she was accompanying my cousin to town. I was determined to catch them in the act, to see for myself what was going on. I didn't take my wife's accompanying cousin to town. During my investigation, I once took my wife's phone. I knew her password since she also knew mine. I checked her socials and found out that she had been sending my cousin her pictures wearing lingerie. More like different ones. I didn't even know that she had lingerie. There were also videos of my wife doing those seductive dances and sending them to my cousin. I was oblivious about what I saw. I got so angry to a point that I wanted to attack them both. In rural areas, the thing called divorce doesn't exist, especially if you are married traditionally. So Pam and I are tied to each other by God and ancestors. I couldn't even share the same bed as her. She had shown me that she was not the innocent and humble girl I had found or that had chosen in front of my father and siblings. She even gave me a beaded bracelet that symbolizes love, meaning I would be stuck with her till the end of time, unless if she gets married to another family, then the elders would have to consult with the ancestors, my home ancestors, to relieve and allow her to be introduced in another surname and ancestors. Before I took the matter to the adults, I confronted the wife about the videos and her conversation with my cousin. The nerve she had to just stare at me and lie on my face, but I had every proof that she was cheating, so I slapped her hard. She couldn't believe it because I was not a violent person. I respect my peace. After I slapped her, she ran out, and I was pretty sure that she was going to cry to my cousin. My cousin came to me looking deadly. He started fighting me till the fight escalated to a point that my brothers came in to stop the fight. I was furious at the fact that they both had lied to me, to my face, when I asked what was going on. The way I was so angry, I wanted to hurt someone so bad. I mean, how could this girl choose me in front of my family, then she goes and does this shameful act while married to me, with my cousin? The fact that I had trusted them when they went to university together, I thought their friendship was pure. Little did I know that I was made a fool and deceived. My brothers asked us to sit down and solve whatever issue that we had, civilly. I didn't want to solve anything. I wanted them to feel the wrath of making me a fool. The brothers asked what we were fighting about. I told them that I will tell them once I have gathered enough information about the wife of mine and dear Kusin. So I became obsessed with finding hard proof, and I wanted the family to know about the snake they were keeping in our yard. I didn't want them to see only pictures and messages because they would definitely deny everything, so I planned to find them on the act. I know it was evil of me, but what would I have done? And finally, after weeks of surveillance, I got my proof. I saw them together, in a secluded spot, their arms around each other, their lips locked in a passionate kiss. I felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over me, and I knew I had to do something. I took pictures of them, but they were not enough for the family to believe me. I mean, this girl was a virgin when I married her, meaning she started getting loose when I had taken her virginity. After that, she saw a great opportunity to do infidelity, not with someone from university, but she decided to do it with my cousin. The person I live with is in the same yard. That was pure disrespect, and to be taken for a ride. I wanted to show them what being taken for a ride was like. I wanted them to regret the day they first got attracted to each other. A few weeks later, they went back to university. I was obsessed with finding whatever that was going on between. I couldn't rest without finding the hard evidence, so I was able to convince the family to allow me to leave the loose cannon. I kept my wife and cousin's shameful act for a while because I didn't want to be embarrassed in front of the whole family. I know some would say I have failed to rule my house and look at me as a weak man. Already I was feeling like a failure that my wife had chosen to find solace in another man's arms. What pisses me off more is that Pam didn't even bother saying anything. I mean, communication is one of the greatest keys to a successful and strong marriage and relationship. Why did she fail to communicate with me, and why did she agree to marry me knowing very well that she had some feelings for my cousin? I felt like a fool. A few months later, things were getting worse. My wife and cousin were unstoppable to a point that even the elders had noticed the relationship they had. I tried denying so that I would tell them when I have gathered much concrete evidence. So I asked one of the boys from the village who was doing IT at their university to help me plant a camera in my wife's residential room, also in my cousin's room. I couldn't even look my wife in the eyes because in front of the elders she acted like a good wife, while I knew that she was a fox on a sheep's skin. One day she came to our bedroom and asked us to talk. There was nothing I wanted to talk to her about, so I told her to go to her boyfriend's room, but she refused and caused a scene. Thanks to the fact that when we got married, we were forced to build our own house in the yard since it was big enough for plenty of houses. So when she caused a scene and started kicking things, acting like a psycho, I slapped her and she fell on the bed. She started fighting back, but I just took out my belt and whipped her with it. Did I do wrong by acting like that? I was avoiding being called an abuser or a woman beater, so that's why I opted to whip her like a child, because she was acting like one. For the whole month, she went back to university. I missed her, I missed my wife. My mind and body wanted me to drive to Durban so I could see her and maybe apologize. But what would I be apologizing for, because I was a victim in all this ordeal? My heart wanted nothing to do with her. As much as it was heartbreaking and disappointing to know that my wife was attending the same school as my cousin. Where was the bro code there? How could you sleep or even develop a relationship with your cousin's wife? It's just so disgusting and disloyal. A couple of months later, my father and the elders summoned me and Pam to a family meeting regarding the issue that we were facing. I had recently gotten the evidence I was looking for. I couldn't wait to show the family what the Virgin Mary of a wife I had and their precious son, who is my cousin, did, all in the name of we're going to study in Durban, while their study was getting on top of each other doing shameful acts. Worst part, the woman is married, so when she gets to Durban, her panties get loose and forget that she has a husband back at home. I was in so much fury. I wanted to destroy them both for making me a fool. If I was green, I would have looked like Hulk when angry. I was going crazy because I loved this girl. She was my perfect imperfection, but she was a slut. I had thought Virgin Marys were loyal and honest, but I guessed wrong. She became my worst nightmare in a few years of our marriage. Well, I found out when we were a few years into our marriage. Maybe they started sleeping together right after our wedding day. Who knows? So the family called and addressed the issue that we were facing and that there was a big elephant in the room. You wouldn't believe who that big elephant in the room is. It was me. Imagine, I was the big elephant in the room, meaning I was the one on the wrong in all of everything that my so-called wife and my cousin were doing. Their abomination made me look like a bad person. The elders kept talking and yapping about me failing to maintain my house and my wife's needs. I got really pissed off because the very same wife they were defending and telling me that I was failing was the same wife that had asked me that she had a wish to further her studies, but they couldn't afford it at her home. I took that responsibility as her husband and paid for her studies. Now I am an incompetent and failing husband. Those people were shitting on me, I'm telling you. So as they were still blubbering and exchanging words, I asked them to follow me to the lounge. There was something I needed to show them. I then asked them to call cousin, also because he was also part of the meeting, so I didn't understand why he was not in the room with us. When the cousin was called, I took out the USB that the boy I had paid gave me and put it on a TV, then pressed play. Some elders were in awe when they watched the video of my wife and cousin getting it on in Pam's student room while her roommate was out. Some were shouting at me as if I was a child, telling me to switch the thing off, while others called me heartless and selfish. Well, those who called me heartless and selfish were my cousin's parents, meaning they knew about the abomination that their son was doing with my wife. I remember hearing my cousin's mother saying I was the reason why my wife found comfort in another man's bed. It was because I was not a man enough and didn't have balls to rule and treat a woman. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to at least defend me, but they just looked at me like I had grown horns. That time the video was still playing. I was actually enjoying the show, much to the elders' annoyance, who kept telling me to switch it off. Pam was crying and kept asking that I switch off the video and fix our relationship. I don't know what was happening to me, but I got disgusted the moment she opened her slutty mouth. I switched the video off after I played it for a full 30 minutes. I called Pam's parents to join us because I didn't understand why they didn't call her parents. I mean, if it was a family meeting, both families were supposed to be present, but my family decided to deal with the issue alone and not include my wife's family. A while later, they arrived and I asked for the meeting to continue since all parties and their families were present. I then played the video again so that my in-laws would get an idea of why they were urgently called to the family meeting. Pam was busy weeping like someone had died, while my cousin looked at me like he begged for my blood. But I didn't care less because what they did to me was inhumane. No man would wish to see his wife getting banged by another man. Am I a bad person? The family meeting ended, and I had announced that I wanted to divorce Pam, but as expected, I was told that I can't divorce her because she was already a part of the family ancestrally, and I am connected to her since I was the one who took her innocence. I didn't understand that because even if she was a part of the family ancestrally, she could have still went back to her home, and I had paid for her innocence, so what they were saying was bullshit. A few weeks later, the family called another family meeting since my issue with Pamela was not resolved. Everyone was angry at how the meeting had turned. Names were exchanged, and it was a mess, and to top it all, they were blaming for my wife's infidelity. I would have understood if she had cheated with another boy from her school, but she decided to just cheat with one of my family members. The family sat me down and told me the things I didn't want to hear and I never expected. They pleaded with me to forgive my cousin and move on because what happened had happened. There was no way of changing or undoing what had happened. I couldn't believe them, so I asked if I were to forgive my cousin, what about the wife? Should I forgive her also? I couldn't accept the plea, and I didn't want to because they were taking me for a ride. They didn't take my heartbreak, my dignity, and my place as the victim. I was the victim in all of the situations, so I didn't understand how they could take the side of the people who betrayed me in the most cruel and shameful way. I was not going to forgive them. Pamela's family came to fetch her a month after the meeting had taken place. They were disappointed and hurt by their daughter's act. I assured them that I would continue paying for Pam's university fees so they wouldn't worry about it, but I wanted nothing to do with her. I wanted her gone. My father came to my house a while after my in-laws had departed. He also talked me out about forgiving my family. I didn't understand, and it shocked me that my own father didn't see things in my perspectives, and he didn't care about my feelings, rather the cousin's feelings and well-being. The only people I had support from were my brothers. I would never forget them for the support they had given me during my heartbreak period. About 5 months later, Pam's family came back with Pam. She was pushing a very big stomach. They came to our homestead to report Pam's pregnancy. I just didn't know how to feel about the whole thing because she had told me that she wanted to focus on her modules, so she didn't want any child. I understood her, but she had the nerve to open legs for my cousin and allow him to pull out inside her. What if the guy had a sickness or a virus, and if I didn't find out about the affair they were having, she was going to continue sleeping with me while sleeping with my cousin also. It's just disgusting. So, the family asked who the child belonged to. I thought she was going to tell the truth and there was really no need to ask who the father of the baby was. Instead, she told the family that the child was mine and she won't be able to take care of the child alone while she was still traditionally married and she wanted to come back home to her husband. I told her to take the pregnancy to its rightful owner because I was not going to take any responsibility for the pregnancy I knew nothing about. And the last time I had been intimate with her, we used a protection, her rules. And it was 9 months before, which meant if the child was mine, she would have given birth by the time she came to my house to report the pregnancy. The hate I had for her grew more and more to a point that I even hated her smell. Why would she do something like that? Was she hoping that I would acknowledge and accept her lies while she knew the truth? I was not going and willing to do such a foolish thing. She should have thought twice before coming to my house to give me the child that was not mine. That thing was not going to affect only me, but the child also, because if I had acknowledged her pregnancy and took responsibility for the child was going to get sick because my cousin and I are not using the same surnames. I still loved her very much, but I couldn't allow her to make me a fool once again. So I threw her and her family out. I didn't care if she fell and got hurt. I was in the mix of hurt and anger. My family kept pestering me about forgiving my cousin because it was not good to stay angry at a family member for too long. In everything they had said, I only noticed that they were only asking me to forgive my cousin, but not my wife. If I asked why, they never mentioned anything or asked me to forgive Pamela also, because they were both on the wrong. The answers I got were, my wife didn't show any respect for herself and the family she got married to, meaning she was the cause of the drift between my cousin and I. The unfairness and politics they had, I didn't want to involve myself in it, so I came up with the decision of forgiving none of them because both of them were the cause of the drift. Things got tense and sour at home. The family was angry at me for having a cold heart, as they had put it. It was no longer a happy and united family. Well, they assumed that I was the one who made things like how they got, because if I had not released or showed them the video and pictures of Pamela and my cousin, none of the family members would be angry at each other. My father took my cousin's side and told me that if I gave my wife time and attention, she wouldn't have fallen in another man's arms, so everything was on me. I couldn't believe my father. I mean, these two people embarrassed me and tarnished my dignity as a man and a husband. Was I not supposed to go to work so I could provide for my wife and be able to pay for her university fees? Was not a man enough by wanting and striving for what's best for my wife and our future children? Please make me understand because I am really failing to. Time passed and I moved out from home because things were no longer the same. My father had started getting sick. My brother said I was the cause of his sickness because of my selfishness. I was shocked when my brothers had also turned their backs on me. I mean, I didn't ask my father to take my cousin's side and not put his own child to his best interests. Instead, he joined the people who wanted to tarnish my name and forced me to forgive my cousin. I had no problem forgiving my cousin, you know? But what pissed me off more is the fact that they were treating my cousin as the victim in everything and I was the villain. I decided to move out. Well, I got an apartment in the city so I would be closer to work. But before I moved out, I got cursed by my aunt, cousin's mom, wishing bad luck upon me. That was pure witchcraft and evil of her. How can you curse your brother's child for your son's doings? I was so disappointed with my family, they even made me choose that I should either forgive my cousin or move out of the homestead until I have made up my mind and stop acting like a teenager. I chose to move out, not because I was childish or something, but I wanted them to consider their statements. They were all in the wrong, and I felt like they were acknowledging that the mess my cousin made along with my wife was a good thing. There were two parties in the ordeal, but they wanted me to forgive only one part. How fair is that? A couple of months later, I received a call from Pamela, asking for forgiveness and wanting to fix things. I didn't have time for her and her emotional blackmailing. During those months, Pamela's father passed on, and I was forced to go and pay my respect to the family as a husband, of course. In our culture, you are forced to attend either a funeral or any ceremony for your in-laws because you and that family are lawfully banded to each other, meaning you are one of them even if you and your husband no longer get along. Since we lived in the village that is ruled by the king, what happens in your household must stay and be solved in your household, and make sure that the family household issues do not reach the outside community. Unless if someone has done something unlawful and endangering the villagers, then the issue will be taken to the king. The king will then decide how to punish that sinner and what kind of punishment is good for them. So on the other hand, my issue was a family issue. So I had to pretend in front of the nosy villagers to be in good space with Pamela. It was really hard pretending, but it somehow felt good to be in her presence again, even though my heart was no longer beating for her. It had released her. So I played my good husband and son-in-law role for the whole weekend. It was really hard pretending. People, please don't pretend, rather be rare and real than being fake and famous. It was not nice. Pamela's baby was looking so much like my cousin, and that really added to my hard heart because she was so sure that the child was mine, knowing very well that I was not the father. What was she hoping to achieve? Because even if the child had turned out to be mine, I wouldn't have gotten back with her, but I would have taken responsibility for my child. The following year, Pamela graduated from university. I was really happy and proud of her. I mean, she showed me that I was not paying for anything, so it made me proud that she took her modules seriously. The relationship of my cousin and Pamela continued. I guess she was not really apologizing when she came to apologize the last time. Their relationship was no longer a secret. Villagers had found out about it, and my family became the talk of the village. Truthfully, I didn't feel anything when they officialized their relationship, not even a pang of jealousy, which meant I was really over Pamela. So I called the whole family for a meeting. It had been since I had hatred and hunger for vengeance towards my cousin and Pamela, so it was time to let things be and let bygones be bygones. Not for them, but for my conscience and peace. I didn't want my family to keep hating me for something I would have long done. So during the meeting, I asked them to call Pam and my cousin. When everyone was there, I then told them that I was forgiving them and gave them my blessings to their relationship. After I had told them that, I then took the beaded bracelet that Pam had given me when she chose me and gave it back to her so she can give it to the right person since I was no longer her man. Another month passed. My cousin asked me to accompany him to ask for a hand in marriage for Pam at her homestead. I knew my cousin was somehow cheesy, but he should have known at least half of our traditions since he also grew up in the village. My father had gotten better after I had released my heart and appeased the ancestors for my behavior. So he told my cousin that Pamela was lawfully and ancestrally married to me, meaning she belonged to my family clans, so if he wanted to ask for Pam's hand in marriage, he should do that to me. I had never thought that such a facade would one day happen to me, like having to hand my wife, or must I say ex-wife, to my cousin. It was just unbelievable. I still believed that they would somehow break up and realize their wrongs. I had once asked Pam why she gave me the beaded bracelet if she wanted to be with my cousin, and what I got was she was advised by her mother that she should choose me in the reed dance because I would be able to take care of her and her family, so she had to pause her relationship with my cousin. How crazy is that? So she told me that she knew that I would be able to take her to school and build her home because I had a good paying job and my cousin was still a student. That was why she chose to go to Durban University of Technology so she can be able to see and be with my cousin, meaning that she used me for her own and her family's benefit. I wouldn't have been surprised if her mother also advised her to say that the child was mine, knowing very well that there was no possible way the child would have been mine. I was no longer angry or disappointed, but I was aggrieved. So she chose me because I was a meal ticket to her. I was going to be Bob the Builder in her home and be the student fund in her studies. I couldn't say anything anymore, but I was glad that she had told me the whole truth at the end. Her bride price was paid and she was officially out of my life. Did I deal with the situation in the wrong way? Please advise me.